We now have confirmation that June is one of Nintendo Switch's best month ever. So no longer can we pretend that like Switch is on the downswing or that the console is selling less or that it's at the end of its lifespan. Like, it's been 6 years, they're going to release a new console by the end of the year. Like, no longer are we going to keep up this narrative because it's clearly demonstrably not true. Not only is June 2023 one of Nintendo's best months ever for the Switch, it also more than doubled the sales of the PS5. You know, Street Fighter 6 couldn't compete with Zelda. Who possibly could have seen that coming? You know, maybe some handsome, extremely talented YouTuber who writes novels and covers gaming news could have predicted it, but I don't know anybody like that, do you? It's been a wild ride, but we are reaching the point where I think it's going to be extremely difficult for people like RGT85, for Player Essence, for Arlo, for UTech USA, for Switch Force, for any of these YouTube channels, any of these fake channels that are simply looking for new things to talk about so they can make money and not work a real job. You know, these parasites in society who are desperately trying to, push the Switch 2 rumors. Like, we're reaching the point now where this is going to be like a repeat of the Switch Pro, in which they can't keep doing this. They can't keep denying reality that Switch is not getting replaced anytime soon. The Switch is dominating right now. Like, I've seen very few people like acknowledge like the reality of this. Like, the only person I've seen is Stuttering Craig, and I can't begin to tell you how like thankful I am that Stuttering Craig is actually genuine about this, who's actually been able to like explain this adequately to his audience and to like anybody who brings this up, because this was something that was like bothering me for years now. With this adamant like insisting that like the Switch is about to be replaced. No. Oh, but the sales are switching. No. They're not going down. That is demonstrated fact at this point. And, with Tears of the Kingdom out now, selling several million units, I'm sure it's well on its way to outselling Elden Ring, with Mario Bros. Wonder coming out, like, what are they going to do next? Like, because we're in this position where, like, we're halfway through the PS5 life cycle now. It's a bomb, right? It's a disaster. Nobody wants to admit it, that the PS5 and Series X is losing out to an older platform, the Nintendo Switch. They don't want to admit that. They don't want to like confess that like this is causing problems for them. They don't want to acknowledge it. They're trying to like downplay this. We might legit see the Switch continue to be supported up until like the release of the next generation of PlayStation and Xbox. And if that happens, like, it's going to be rough. Like, I don't know if they'll ever be able to recover from this, because if Nintendo releases their next piece of hardware and that's successful as the Switch, right? If they can like replicate the success they've had with the Switch, and Xbox and PlayStation continue to stagnate, which by all accounts, including my own, is going to happen. Like, I don't think PlayStation and Xbox are ever going to recover from this, especially Xbox. But PlayStation, I think, is also on the downswing, and nobody wants to admit it, that, like, all their IPs are dead. Neil Druckmann has run their, Naughty Dog into the ground. You have, like, all these failures. Horizon Zero Dawn is the big one. Like, they haven't been able to do anything to compete with Nintendo. And I think audiences in general are like starting to acknowledge that. Like, I'm shocked at like the enthusiasm that games like Metroid Dread and Pikmin 4 are getting from the community. Because 10 years ago, I remember, Pikmin 3 getting shit on. I remember like the hate for like the Wonderful 101 and Codename Steam and, Ever Oasis, all these like, lower tier Nintendo games. Like, oh, nobody would want to play that. But, now we're seeing Pikmin 4, and like anybody trying to like downplay this game is getting laughed at. Like it's just a complete joke. I've seen people like complain about Ochi. I've seen people complain about like the difficulty. I've seen people like complain about the caves. I've seen them like try to say the demo wasn't fun. I've seen them like do this or that. It's been a complete joke, honestly. And the game is like shaping up to be like the best-selling Pikmin game ever, right? Like, people like Sean Malmstrom came out and like tried to saying, oh, they need to stop making Pikmin games because they don't sell. But they're selling more. Pikmin 1 and 2 have done pretty well. Like, plenty of people have picked those games up on Switch. People are picking up Pikmin 4. Like, I'm really excited for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? But I also want to see new, innovative, like lesser known titles from Nintendo get their chance to shine. And Pikmin 4, I think, is in an interesting position to come out and like be a relative modest success. I don't think it's going to sell more than like a couple of million units, but that is going to be a huge success for Pikmin, right? I don't think we've ever seen like a really big Pikmin success story ever, right? It's always been like an IP that's been kind of downplayed by the community. Like it's always been ignored, but like this might be the biggest success. This is going to be the biggest success Pikmin has ever had, right? More fans are going to be born from this day. It's getting impossible, I think, to downplay like every major Nintendo release the way they used to, right? Like people crying about Pikmin 4, oh, it's not mainstream enough. Like Tears of the Kingdom just came out in May, so it's like, what do you mean not mainstream enough? Like most people don't spend all of their time playing video games, bro. It's a complete joke, and I really have to wonder when the entire house of cards is going to collapse, right? Like, game journalists are losing out. YouTubers have lost control of the narrative. CZ Hunter is like having problems with his neo vagina. Sean Malmstrom has spent like the past legit real talk, like 15 years of his life blogging about how 2D Mario is superior and how like Nintendo needs to like stop making 3D games because they don't sell as well. And like, they show off Super Mario Wonder, right, which is a 2D game, with fresh visuals, fresh ideas, and all he can do is complain about it, right? Like the idea that like old good, new bad is like such a played out thing at this point that we're starting to see like infighting between people who feel this way, right? You have people who will defend like early New Super Mario Bros versus later New Super Mario Bros. You have people who will defend like Pikmin 1 over Pikmin 2. You have like people who will like fight over Super Metroid versus Prime. Like you have all this like weird division between fans, and like initially it was like a real crippling thing, the community. Because like, oh man, look at all these people. They're so mad at all of these games that exist. But now it's like whenever people start bleeding about this stuff, like all anybody does is just like they get some chocolate milk, they drink it, and they're just like, go play something else. Like that's kind of the mindset now, is that you can't really pretend as if the Switch has nothing to play like you used to. It's so interesting to me to see like how the narrative like this year, back when they were still pretending that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be the last major Switch game ever, right? The Switch 2 is coming out in November 2023, guys. Back when they were doing that, like that was the prevailing narrative with these people, is that like they were telling you that like there is nothing I want to play. Nothing. Oh, but what about Fire Emblem Engage? Nothing. What about Cereza and the Lost Demon? Nothing. What about Octopath Traveler 2? Nothing. What about Advance Wars? Nothing. What about Tears of the Kingdom? That's it, right? That was their narrative going into this, is that like Tears of the Kingdom was the only thing they were looking forward to because it was the only big AAA game. But oh man, there are so many other AAA games that do what Zelda does better, like Horizon and Death Stranding and New Vegas. Like it's a joke, right? It is absolutely a joke. And right now we're kind of in this period where people are like half-heartedly trying to pretend like Starfield is going to beat Zelda for Game of the Year. It's not going to happen. Todd can do like whatever he wants. He can like suck Jeff Keighley's dick on stage. He can put as many mountains you can climb into Starfield. Like he can make an entire planet that's just like a big mountain that you just have to like fly a Starfield up. Like he can do anything he wants, right? He can do whatever, and it's not going to work. Okay, like it's embarrassing going back to like Fallout New Vegas and kind of thinking that like, wow, Breath of the Wild came out 7 years after this, and coming back to this, it's impossible to play because it's so boring, it's so basic, it's so simplistic. Like there's nothing to the game. It's not a good video game at all, right? It's remarkable how much like Nintendo has innovated the open world space in this in such a short span of time, and nobody wants to admit it. Just like they don't want to admit the Switch is going strong, because that would be admitting that Switch has won the console war. That would be admitting that like it's over and that the the industry's attempt at driving Nintendo out of the industry has failed. And what we're seeing now is basically like the death throes of that culture. Is that like they're still rabidly insisting if there's something wrong with Nintendo, that they like censor their games, that they don't release like games from Japan, or that they copyright strike stuff on YouTube. Like none of that's true, but like, you know, people have been pretending it has been for like decades now, and you know, people still will buy into the myth to a certain extent. You know, Angry Joe, like to this day, will insist that's the main reason he doesn't cover Nintendo content is because of copyright strikes. When, you know, you can easily just find this stuff on YouTube, like from other creators, people like me who cover the same content and don't get copyright struck. It's almost like he's completely making it up in order to push an agenda, right? It is it can't survive like long term. And I really wonder if like, I don't think the industry really realizes this, that like they are being left behind. Like whenever I see like these people like seriously try making videos saying that like, oh, Starfield, I'm hyped for it now after the Direct, you know, the Xbox Direct where they showed off Starfield. Like, you know, they said that was like, people made videos like that like a day after it came out and completely forgot about it. It had like major Beyond Good and Evil 2 like gameplay demonstration vibes behind it. Like it had the same exact like kind of energy and like, oh, this is going to be one of the best games ever made. And then, you know, people a couple of years later will completely forget the game ever existed. All right. Like how many times have we seen Beyond Good and Evil 2 go through that cycle where like it gets shown off, oh man, this is the Zelda clone that's going to kill Zelda, and then it just completely disappears. And then it reappears as being not a Zelda clone. You know, it's a completely new original thing that has nothing to do with the original property. And like, you know, the obvious thing of bringing up is that like, well, this isn't what we were initially promised. Like nobody talks about that. They're just telling you like, oh man, this is the best game ever. This is going to be the best game ever. And then, of course, it never comes out, right? Beyond Good and Evil 2 is never getting made. Like, I don't know why anybody, like, continues to pretend that it is. We're at that point now, right, where there's really no arguing that Nintendo is the best in the industry anymore. You know, people used to think the iPhone would put them out of business. People used to think that like PlayStation would put them out of business. People used to think that like Sega was more popular than them, right? None of that was ever true, but like people believed it. But like I can tell you that like at this stage, like I don't see any reasonable criticism being out lobbied at Nintendo in this day and age. You know, being a fan, like the biggest thing I have a problem with is that like apparently BlackRock owns like 5% of their stock or something like that. You know, I'm concerned about that. But like other than that, like there is absolutely nothing wrong with Nintendo. Oh, and that and like the they them pronoun usages. Like, you know, I've been having problems with Nintendo of America and their terrible localizations over the past couple of years. So that's been a problem. But like other than that, right? You know, I have had no real complaints about the company, right? They've been putting out great games. They've been putting out great hardware. I'm like really, really enjoying them. And I cannot wait to see just what they deliver in the future. After we all forget that the PlayStation, Xbox, PC, iPhone, and all of these nonsense competitors are long forgotten.